How many games will the Las Vegas Raiders win in 2024? What's going on, Raider Nation and Raiders fans? It's your boy Mayo Jones here, back at with another NFL record prediction. And this time we'll be doing our NFL record prediction for the Las Vegas Raiders for the 2024 NFL season. I'm gonna give you my thoughts and my game analysis, see which games I think the Raiders will win or which games I think the Raiders will lose. Now the question is, do you think the Raiders are going to take a step forward this year? That's the question. Now, we're going to see. So before I give you my record prediction for the Las Vegas Raiders for the 2024 NFL season, don't forget, put the thumbs up to like the video, subscribe to my channel for more options, and don't forget to comment down your opinion below to see how good you think the Raiders will be. Do you think the Raiders, this is the year the Raiders, make the playoffs? Do you think the Raiders are going to win the AFC West for the first time since like a couple years ago, or you think that they're going to miss out on the playoffs once again and suck? So let me know what your opinions on the Raiders is. So we're going to get things started. So week 1, they got to play against the Chargers on the road. Obviously, I got the Chargers winning this game because the Chargers, they're at home and LA is kind of a tricky place to play at. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to get his guys going, and I feel like LA and the crowd's going to be pumped. And plus, the Chargers have the better quarterback, and I think they got a better coaching staff, in my opinion. And they're at home in this game, and both these two teams are even to each other. So yeah, I wouldn't. I think the Chargers, can win this game. Like, I don't think it's a bad matchup for the Chargers. I just feel like, the defense is going to do a good job. I think their defense is going to win this game, where I think their pass rush is going to give the Raiders offense some issues. And they pretty much got a talented secondary that can really slow down the Raiders pass catchers. So, yeah. And even though Justin Herbert doesn't have a lot of good weapons against the Raiders secondary, I think he could definitely take advantage of the Raiders' young secondary, which is not great. So yeah, I think the Chargers, can win that game. Week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, I got them dropping this game because the Ravens are a better team, better quarterback, better coaching staff. They're at home, and that's pretty much about it. I mean, Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews is going to be a problem for the Raiders secondary, because I don't think you guys really have the corners and the safeties to cover against the Ravens. Like, I just don't see how the Raiders cover the Ravens. And plus, I think they have a better defense and a better secondary that can really man up against the Raiders pass catchers. But they don't really have much of a passers, but I think the Raiders can run the ball on them a little bit to have a little success. So, yeah. But the Ravens, so I think the Ravens can win that game at home. Then week 3, they got to play against the Panthers. This is the home opener. I think they get a win here I think they beat the Panthers to get their first win of the season, because that's a game I think the Panthers can win because they got the quarterback advantage. They have a lot of weapons on offense that can give your defense problems. But I got the Raiders win this game because the Raiders are just an overall better team, in my opinion. They're at home, and I just think their defense can win them this game. I think their pass rush can do a good job, like giving the Panthers offense and Bryce Young some issues. So yeah, and I don't think the Panthers defense is that great. I think the Raiders can have success run the ball on them and throwing the ball on them. Like, I don't think the Panthers really have enough guys in the secondary that can man up against the Raiders pass catching. So yeah. So I think the Raiders should be able to win that game. And then week 4, they got to play against the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, this is a game that can definitely go either way. Now, I could definitely see the Raiders win this game, given the fact that the Browns, when they're on the road, their defense does not play really good, and their offense starts to struggle. And Deshaun Watson is bad, especially against good defense. But I don't really care how bad he is. But I'm going to lean towards the Cleveland Browns here to win this game, because the Browns, I just kind of really feel like they're just a better team overall. They have a better coaching staff. And, they're more stable with the quarterback position. And I just think the Browns, I feel like their O line can do a good job at blocking the Raiders. I think they can block the Raiders, and I think Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, those guys are going to be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle, and I just think they'll have a good game. And I just think the Browns defense is going to win them this game. I think their pass rush is going to defense will come to play, which I think they'll stop their running game. And I think their secondary, they have a much better secondary than the Raiders. I think they can find a way to play match up with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. I think their secondary can do that. So yeah, I like the Browns here to win this game on the road. Then week 5 against the Broncos. Obviously, I got them beating the Broncos because I think the Broncos are going to be viewed one of the bottom teams in the NFL. They have a better quarterback. They have the better coaching staff. They're the better team overall. And, they're at home in this game. So, they're not at home. The game's in Denver where it's kind of a tough place to play at. But I want to go with the Broncos here to win this game. But I don't know. Broncos have questions at the quarterback position. And especially against that good of a defense like the Raiders, I wouldn't trust that. So, yeah. I think the Raiders are a better team overall. And I think they have the better defense than the Broncos. So, yeah, I think the Raiders win that game in Denver. Then week 6 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is another swing game that can go either way. I feel like this is a game I think the Raiders can definitely win because it's at home in their building now. Last year, the Steelers, went on the road and beat the Raiders. But I have a feeling that the Raiders defense can totally win them this game here. But I'm going to go with the Steelers here because I think the Steelers are just an overall better team, better quarterback, better coaching staff, and I think their defense will win them this game. I think the defense is just slightly better than the Raiders. I think their pass rush is going to come to play, and I feel like George Pickens is going to be a problem for that Raiders secondary. So yeah, and I think Pat Fairmouth will too. So yeah, I think the Steelers, their defense can win them this game, and I think they have a better secondary that can man up against Devontae Adams. So and Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. So yeah, I think the Steelers, can win that game on the road. Next game, week 7 against the Los Angeles Rams. I got the Rams winning this game because the game's in LA. It's a tough place to play at because the Rams are kind of a dome team. The Rams have just got the better quarterback, the better coaching staff. They're at home. They're the better team overall. But I don't think the Rams defense is good as yours, but I think they can beat their defense with the skill group they have on offense. I feel like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua will be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle. And I think the Rams got a better secondary than the Raiders. I think, they can do a good job, playing sticky coverage against the Raiders pass catchers. So, yeah, and their defense is pretty young. They got some guys who can who can really play at a higher level, which I think their young defense can come to play here. So, yeah, I think the Rams win that game. Then week 8 against the Chiefs, I'm going to say the Raiders win that game in Las Vegas because I understand the Chiefs really play better in Vegas, but I have a feeling the Raiders are going to win this game at home because the Raiders, they're at home because I feel the Raiders defense is going to give Mahomes Chiefs offense a challenge. I think their defense will come to play and give Mahomes a lot of issues because we've seen that last year in Kansas City where the Raiders defense really scored 2 touchdowns and all that. So, yeah, I think their defense is going to win them this game here at home. Next game against the Bengals. I got them losing to the Bengals because the Bengals are at home, better quarterback, better coaching staff. They're a more complete team. There's not much to say here. And, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are just going to be a problem for the Raiders secondary. And I think the Bengals kind of have a slightly better defense, which I can definitely confuse the Raiders offense. Big Lou is going to find a way to confuse the Raiders offense, and he's going to find a way to play man coverage against them in the secondary. He can find a way to cover Devontae Adams and those guys. So, yeah, I think the Bengals win that game. And then they get a bye week 10. They're 3-6 before the bye, which is not looking good. So, after the bye, they have to play against the Miami Dolphins. obviously, I got the Dolphins win this game because the Dolphins are at home. They got the better quarterback, better coaching staff. They're a more complete team. And I feel like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Wild is going to be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle, which I don't see how the Raiders can cover the Dolphins. So, yeah, and I think the Dolphins have a much better secondary that can really man up against the Raiders receivers. So, yeah, but I don't think the Dolphins' pass rush is that great, but I think their defense can just – I mean, I'm not too worried about their run defense. I mean, as long as they can crowd the box, I think they can play the run. So, yeah, I think the Dolphins find a way to win that game in Miami. Then week 12 against the Denver Broncos at home. I think they'll sweep the Broncos. So I'm gonna give the Raiders a win here because I just don't think the Broncos are just gonna like win one game against the Raiders because the Raiders have pretty much owned them for the last couple of years. Because I don't even remember the last time the Broncos have like beat them. So I just need to see it before I believe it. So that's why I think the Raiders are gonna sweep the Broncos. Then week 13, I mean, I think the Raiders are just a slightly better team overall. So that's why I think the Raiders will beat the Broncos twice. Then they got to play against the Chiefs on a Friday. I'm going to say the Chiefs, win this game at home because the Chiefs are at home, better quarterback, better coaching staff. I think they're a better team overall. And I just kind of feel like, Kansas City, I think they're going to do a good job moving the football, controlling the game on offense. And I think defensively, I think they can give them problems. So, so, um, so, so yeah, but I think the Chiefs, I just don't think the Raiders have the corners to cover the Chiefs pass catchers. So yeah, I think the Chiefs offense is just gonna be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle. So I think the Chiefs, win that game. Week 14 against Tampa Bay Bucks. I think the Bucks win this game because the Bucks are at home. They got the better quarterback, better coaching. They're at home in this game, and I just think Todd Bowles' defense is a lot better. I think the Bucks defense is gonna find a way to at least like play well against this Raiders offense, and I think they pretty much has a better secondary that can play man coverage against the Raiders pass catchers. And the Bucks got a pretty good solid old line. They can block the Raiders. And I just feel like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are just gonna be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle. Like I just don't see how the Raiders are gonna cover the Bucks. So yeah. That's why I think the Bucks win that game. Then week 15 against the Atlanta Falcons on a Monday. This is in Vegas. Obviously, this is a game I think Atlanta can win because they got the better quarterback. I think they're a better team overall. They got weapons on offense that can give the Raiders defense some problems, but they have a pretty good solid old line. Their defense is totally not great. They don't really have much of a pass rush, but their secondary is fine but not great. So I'm gonna say the Raiders are gonna pull off the upset to win this game because I just have a feeling that the Falcons don't really have much of a pass rush to at least like slow down the Raiders. I think the Raiders. I feel like the Raiders offense is going to have a good game here. I think they're going to move the ball on them. I think they can throw at them. And I think they pretty much have a better defense, which I think their defensive line is going to give Kirk Cousins a lot of problems. So, yeah, I think the Raiders win this game at home. But I would not be shocked if Atlanta won. And especially on a Monday night in Vegas, it's kind of tough. And I feel like, Antonio Pierce is going to get his guys ready. And I feel like the Vegas is going to be pumping this game. So, yeah, I like the Raiders to win that game. Week 16 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is another game that can go either way. Now, some people could be picking the Raiders to win because they're at home. But I'm going to say Jacksonville is going to win this game because I feel like Trevor Lawrence can do enough to throw the ball through the air against your secondary. I feel like Jacksonville is going to throw on them. And, I just don't see how the Raiders are going to be able to cover the Jags, especially with their receivers they got in Brian Thomas, Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk. and all that, and Evan Ingram too as well. I don't see how the Raiders going to be able to cover the Jags. And it's going to be too. So those guys will be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle. Their offensive line is pretty improved. Their defensive line is pretty much underrated. Maybe they can give Gardner Minshew some issues, but here's the thing: this could be the Gardner Minshew revenge game, but I don't think he's going to get his revenge in Jacksonville. And all of a sudden, they kind of have a better secondary that can really man up against the Raiders receivers. So yeah, I know the game's at home, but Jacksonville is just an overall better team, better coaching staff. They got the better quarterback. So, yeah, that's why I got the Jags. Then week 17, they got to play against the New Orleans Saints. In New Orleans, this is a Derek Carr revenge game. So, I think Derek Carr is going to get – I say Derek Carr gets revenge on the Raiders because, if the game was in Vegas, I could go with Vegas, but the game's in New Orleans, and New Orleans is a dome team, and it's a tough place to play at. And the Saints overall got the better quarterback. They're at home in this game. And I just think the Saints defense is going to win them this game. Like, I think their defensive line is going to find a way to slow down the Raiders' run game, and they're going to give the Raiders offensive issues. And their secondary is pretty talented, where I think they can man up against the Raiders receivers. And, I feel like Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, those guys are just going to be too much for the Raiders secondary to handle because I just don't see how the Raiders are going to be able to cover the Saints. So I think Derek Carr should have a good game here. So, yeah, I like the Saints here at home to win that game. And then week 17 against the Los Angeles Chargers, obviously I think they'll split with the Chargers at home. So I think the Raiders will win that game like they always do. So basically, I have the Raiders going 6-11, 4-2 in the division, 4-8 at home, 5-3 at home, 1-8 away. I mean, that's pretty not bad for a team, but I feel like I feel like the Raiders can go somewhere from like 5 to like 5 to 8 wins. I'm probably gonna go with 6 because they kind of got a tougher schedule and they have questions at the quarterback. But when you look at the teams that are schedule, it's pretty tough because they have to play the best division in the NFL, which is the Ravens, the Browns, the Steelers, and the Bengals. They got to play the Chiefs twice. They got to play the Rams. They got to play the Dolphins. They got to play the Bucks. They got to play the Jags. They got to play the Saints and the Falcons. I mean, this is a hard schedule. So I think the Raiders are probably going to win like 5, 6, 7, or 8 games, but I can definitely see them at least winning one more game. Like, I can definitely see them at least like winning. I can see them at least like beating the Browns or the Steelers. I can definitely see them beating the Raiders or the Jags or the Saints. Or I can definitely see them losing games like the Falcons. I could see them, losing to like the Panthers and all that. So yeah, those are some games I could definitely see them lose or win to, but I don't expect them to do any better than 8-9. But I feel like 6-11 sounds about right. I have questions about the Raiders. Will they at least be the team to take a step forward this year? Will Antonio Pierce be the next Dan Campbell? I feel like he has potential to be a really good NFL coach in the league, but I hope the Raiders prove me wrong. But I have a feeling the Raiders will go 6-11 because of their schedule and because of the quarterback position. I'm not a huge fan of Aiden O'Connell. I don't think he's a guy. I don't think Gardner Minshew is a guy either. I feel like Gardner Minshew will likely start, but I think the Raiders are going to be in position to like at least draft a quarterback in 2025. So, yeah. So I think the Raiders are going to be in position to draft a quarterback or maybe like get a veteran in free agency like next March. That's where I see it. The Raiders, I mean, I like the pieces they have on offense. I mean, their receiving core is still the same despite the Brock Bowers addition. The offensive line is pretty strong. The defense did improve by adding Christian Wilkins along with Max Crosby. Now, the defensive line is pretty strong. Linebacker group is okay. Outside of Spillane is nothing special. The secondary is just not good. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the back half of the defense. and the scheme is kind of very vanilla. And like I said, it's not my favorite style of defense. I think the Raiders really need to improve their secondary because I don't think their secondary is great. Like, I'm not a fan of it, but I'm a fan of their defensive line being strong. So yeah. So 6-11 is what I got for the Raiders. Like I said, I hope they can prove me wrong, but I just feel like, this is a year I think the Raiders are just not there. I don't think they're there yet. I say at least give them at least like one more year back to like get the Raiders back in the playoffs. So yeah. So I think the Raiders could definitely be a playoff team in 2025. So yeah. Well, that's my prediction for the Raiders, 6-11. So let me know in the comments section below what you guys think. Do you think I'm right about this? Do you think I'm wrong about this? Just let me know in the comments section below what you think, how you feel about the Raiders and all that, and you think they're gonna be good or not. Well, this is Emmanuel Jones, I'm a big fan. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later in the next video. Peace.